Hi Mark, how are you?
I'm good, really good. I'm kind of excited to chat to you. Something different for my lunchtime on a Monday.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited to chat to you as well. How are you guys? Are you in Brisbane?
No, I'm based on the Gold Coast, so
Okay.
no lockdowns, which is man, so I feel so lucky that I don't have to deal with that at the moment. It's a little bit annoying because I live right on the Queensland New South Wales border, which kind of does still like even though we're not restricted to do anything in Queensland, but a lot of my life is actually in New South Wales as well, like whether it's business or fun and everything. So and I can't go across the border, so there's still a bit of a restriction, but I can't even imagine what people are going through down in near Sydney and Melbourne and stuff. It sounds like
Yeah,
a nightmare.
it's pretty crazy. And it's just gotten worse over the past weekend, which is a bummer.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
My sister's down there, and she has like she's a teacher, so she was teaching and then has to wear all the masks and stuff the whole way through the day. And but then she's homeschooling as well, like and trying to juggle all of this. And then boyfriend's job was cancelled down there, so then he's got to come like far north Queensland to work. Like it's and like that's probably not even as bad as it gets for so many people. It's horrible.
It's crazy. But I mean, it's funny because I was supposed to go to the Gold Coast with my friends right as lockdown started. And we had so many months to travel and everyone just kept putting it off and it's like, "Oh, why do we not just take the opportunity when it opens like rather than putting things off?" So that's it. As soon as the options are available, I'm going.
Yeah, it's impossible, kind of impossible to book right now though, because you have no idea when.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
the hard part.
Hopefully soon. Well, do you have any advice then for lockdown? I mean, I know you're not experiencing it at the moment, but any advice for
Like
staying?
I've kind of been through my own versions of lockdown in my life. I mean, like with injuries, I feel like really bad injuries in a lot of ways would be similar to lockdown because you're just completely restricted of what you can do. Your whole life's put on hold, and so I've been through that a whole bunch of times. Like I don't know how many weeks I've spent laid up in a hospital bed or in a on the couch at home and not been able to do absolutely anything. Um, I found like for me going through those times where I can sort of manufacture like elements of progress in my life and like whether it's some sort of skill like a novel skill that I can pick up and just be able to do with even though I'm injured, if I can create some element of progress towards something, I find that keeps me more sane than anything else that I can do. Like maybe it's a like if I do something specific to my health, like exercise, if I can create something in there around like that I can kind of track some progress to, or like when I was young and I was going through injuries, it's like I'd pick up like a musical instrument, like try and learn to play the guitar or trying to learn to play the piano or try like just all these different little things. Like I can remember when I had a really bad injury when I was about 18 and I learned to like touch type, which is the weirdest skill ever. And I was like, why would I even do this? Like, I'm going to be a professional surfer. This
Mm.
is such a strange, but now it's like the greatest skill ever, like to be able to like speed type real fast without looking. I just, for me, that keeps me sane. Like any sort of little development of progression for whatever reason is, yeah, it keeps me sane because it's like everything else in your life is totally put on hold and
Mm.
there's all these restrictions placed on you and like just that if your mind's like constantly thinking about what you could be doing now if there wasn't a restriction or where you would be going in your life without all these things holding you back, like you're just going to go absolutely crazy. Like so yeah, that's I don't know, like the financial aspect of it would be really difficult for a lot of people. I think I kind of had to deal with that when the lockdowns hit. Like as far as the majority of my business and the way I make money is now from speaking at events. So when the first restrictions came into place, I think within would have been 2 weeks, I lost 90% of my income. Like so,
Wow.
all the events I probably had 60 keynote events that I was speaking at for the course of the year planned out within 2 weeks, it was just email after email after email after email, everything getting cancelled. So like that part I can understand. Like that's that terrifying notion of when it's like you planned this life out and you budgeted for this and this and this, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Like that was difficult. And I was just lucky. Like I'm in an industry where it was possible to eventually kind of, and I hate using the word because it'd be so frustrating to hear of you. So small business, like to pivot what I do, but it's like, oh, it must drive some people crazy to hear that. But I was just lucky. I'm in an industry where that was actually possible, and so I could get things back on track. But yeah, I mean, to keep you sane, if you can find any sort of element of progress, I think that's what keeps humans sane on a base level, like base psychological level is like. And I heard one guy explain it really well once. It was, well, just imagine like the base human condition is like terrified and anxious and depressed, and like that's your base human condition, and you can prove that by being like, okay, well, just go and lie in a room, lock yourself in a room and lie on a bed and don't do anything. You're not allowed to do absolutely anything, right? And see over time how that progresses, your psyche progresses. Like you go absolutely crazy probably within a week. And so like that's the base condition. But then what keeps you sane is you have all these goals in life, all these different things you want to do. And as you move towards them, like that's sanity in there. So it's like, in a roundabout way, if you can bring a little bit of sanity back to yourself by seeing some sort of progression, I think that's probably the best thing to do in this weird lockdown world we're going through.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so important to keep busy. Even for me, I just find that it makes it so much more bearable because it gives you things to do. And it's actually interesting because I did this course recently and I found out that the brain has so many more negative neurons than positive neurons, which is why we are kind of more inclined to the negative. So I'm excited to talk to you later.
7-1, I think. It's like 7-1 or 9-2 or something.
It's crazy. I didn't even know that. And I was like, wow, makes sense. But yeah,
that makes sense then why you like kind of most people think the way they do. I think it's to just survival mechanisms built into your brain. It's like, here's all the different way that things could go wrong and you might die. So then your brain's got to be like, okay, I got to avoid all this different danger in the future. And your brain's just tuned for that. So that's probably why it's like 7-1 difference. And then I always think that the way your brain evolved possibly was in a way scarier environment, like kind of like millions of years of evolution, like probably plains of Africa, like this tiny little tribe getting attacked by all kinds of different huge terrifying animals. It's like, and that's your evolution like that. So there's no wonder your brain's kind of fine tuned to looking for danger and making sure you don't die. It's not that dangerous anymore. So it's you kind of got to figure out different ways to upgrade that software, maybe like take that ancient software. I don't know what, like an analogy of what sort of real old Windows like one that would be akin to, and like you're trying to function with Windows 1 with computing power that you have now. It's like, yeah, you got to figure out ways to upgrade it, but that's pretty individual how to do that, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I'm so excited to talk all about mentality and fear with you, but I'm going to save that for a bit later. But first, I'd love to hear about your surfing career. So your start to surfing. I've spoken a lot on my YouTube channel about kind of struggling to find my own purpose and merge passion with purpose. So did you always know that surfing was something that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, even from a really young age, even like I was terrified of the ocean when I was really, really young. And then, but what I think, like my dad surfed and my mum like rode a bodyboard, like we were always around the ocean. But I think my heightened fear of the ocean eventually, like that played into my favor because it made surfing even more exciting for me, I think. And then I got my first kind of taste of overcoming a fear. Like, so I was, when I'm terrified of it, and then I kind of like, it's probably the first, like real fear that I conquered to some degree when I was young. And I think that made me really addicted to the sport of surfing. And then I was kind of, going into my early teenage years, I was like, I grew up near another professional surfer who was like 5 years older than me. And I just saw that the lifestyle that he had is just like, when I was like 13, 14, he was like 19 and he had like the coolest car and the hottest girlfriend and was traveling around the world. And I was just like, I was a 13-year-old. I was like, I want a life like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just desperate to have that life that he had. And but I wasn't that talented when I was, you know, like as a surfer. Like I was never a sort of like Australian champion junior surfer or anything. So for me, like the road to create a career around the sport of surfing, I just had to take a different road, and that kind of led down the big wave surfing career. And it was it was a lot more about, I could make a career if I surfed waves that no one else wanted to surf. So that took out the competition that were all way better surfers than me. So then it was really like, to be successful for me, it was more about just dealing with fear more than like specific skill of surfing, even though the skills are a big part of it, but managing the fear and the stress associated with just consistently surfing huge waves over a long period, like that was really interesting to me. Like that made me more successful in the sport of surfing than having actual talent or skill did, like physical talent or skill. And yeah, I went on it's been 2001. I got invited on a surf trip for a magazine back then. Like, this is so long ago. It was like magazines were still a thing that people read. and when you're like in the surf world, when a magazine invites you back in those days, that's like the biggest thing ever. And I couldn't believe that at the time I was probably what is it, 17, 18 years old, and I just left school. Like I'd finished school and I was like not earning enough money from surfing, so I was working in a bar in Circular Quay, like kind of making cocktails and coffees in the morning. And I was kind of at the point where I'm not good enough to be a surfer, so I was just like thinking about what am I going to do with life. And then I get this call from the editor of the magazine. He's like, we want you to come down to Tasmania and do this photo trip for us. And I was like, I couldn't believe he was ringing me, because I was like a no one in surfing. I'm like, sure, like I'll do it for sure. And I found out down the track that he actually rang like 40 other surfers before he got to my name at the bottom of his list. And it was like all those other surfers had declined because, and that's what I didn't realize, because the wave that he wanted us to go and surf was like the scariest wave in the surf industry. And it was like a new wave at the time, and there were all these rumors going around the surf industry about this monster wave that broke off the bottom of Tasmania. And I just said yes to going on the trip, because I was like, well, if I say no to this, then that's the end of my career. And I ended up going on that trip, and just for a whole host of different factors, for whatever reason, I was like extra motivated that day, and I went on to surf like some of the bigger barreling waves in surf history. And then all the photos and the footage went out into the media all around the world, and I got my first like big surfing contracts because of that. And then I just went on from there. I kind of had the formula at that point. I was like, okay, just find really big waves around the world, take the team of photographers and videographers and everyone, go and make the content, put the content out in the media, and then you get paid. Like, so that was like my model for sort of 15 years and doing that, chasing big waves around the world and working with amazingly talented filmers, photographers, water safety crew, publicists, all these different people that made me way more valuable than what I probably should have been based on my talent. Yeah. So that was kind of my big wave surf career in a nutshell.
Isn't that so interesting though, how one opportunity and one decision can really just change the progression of your career in such a huge way?
It's so true. It's crazy. Like I often think about that scenario. And then in my speaking career, I had a sponsor when I was probably like 24, and the marketing manager of that company, it was a sunglass company. He said to me, I've got a friend who does like public speaking in the corporate training world in America, and he used to like climb mountains, Everest and stuff. And he goes, you should do this. And I was just like, no way in hell would I ever get up on stage and speak in front of people, being as introverted as I am. And I didn't really take that much notice of him, of what he said. But then it was like a year down the track, we were traveling, we were on a shoot for that company, and he got his mate to come out, and he asked me, he goes, why don't you just come out to dinner and hear this guy's story? And like I had other things to do at the time. I didn't even want to go to the dinner. And I was just like, I'll just go and see. And like just that meeting and meeting that guy and then his influence on my speaking career, like gave me this whole other career on the side of surfing. And now I like, you know, like going in my future when I get too old to surf big waves, that's probably going to end up being more valuable than my surfing career ever was. And it was just like that one contact that could see it and push me into that meeting. And I said yes to that one meeting that I didn't want to go to. That made all the difference.
Yeah. Wow. And that's amazing because people like me get to hear your story at work and it's so inspiring.
Thanks.
If you were so, as you said, like you get really nervous with public speaking, what made you want to go down that route?
Originally, I never had any intentions to speak, but what I did with that guy, his name's Shane Tui, and he had a corporate training business in America. And what we did originally was we built, using all the footage and scenarios that I'd lived through in my big wave surf career, we built all of that into a game, like a simulated learning game. It's like a choose your own adventure book, you know, when you're a kid and you read the book and you read a scenario and then you can go to this page or this page and see what happens. Yeah. So we built like a video based version of that it was based on my surfing career. So then audiences navigate their way through the game. And in the end, there's like a winning surf team. Right. And he just wanted me to come over there and build that with him, and just said, oh no, you don't have to speak. Like, we'll just build the game and then deliver it. And then he got me along a couple of times. He's like, the client just wants you to come, and I want you to come and watch how the game's built so that we can build more in the future. And then a couple of times he just, like, without me knowing, just dragged me up on stage in front of like 200 people. And he's like, Mark, just tell us the story about this. And like, I like, when I'm not like in the moment, I can do it. He's just like, tell the story. But if he ever had said to me, I want you to come in to tell this story in 2 weeks time in front of this audience of people, like that 2 weeks leading up to do that, I would have just had panic attacks and no way I would have ever turned up on the day. So it was like him kind of in a roundabout tricking me up onto the stage. Like just doing that, like kind of made me realize, oh, okay, maybe I can do this. But then from there, it was like I had to do every different sort of public speaking or facilitation course I could get my hands on just to be able to get to like, and like, I'm not saying I'm a good communicator now. Like I'm like an average communicator, but it took, you know, like that much training to get to there to make it sort of possible. So it's it's crazy, the people that you meet, and you never know who they're going to be. So it's giving people the time of day is it can pay off sometimes.
Yeah, the importance of your network, and it's amazing how many how many people are willing
I was thinking about this the other day. Sorry to jump in, but you know, when you say that, like the value of your network, and there's that age old saying, it's doesn't matter what you do, it's who you know, right? I always think about that, but then I'm like, for sure it's who you know, but it's really who likes you, like that makes a difference. Like it doesn't matter what you do, it's who likes you. Like those people will make a difference. And I always like imagine like there's so many different factors that go into like whether or not you like someone and you actually want to work on them. Like you could go through hundreds of different things that go into that. But I think like my careers are examples of that. It's like that network is by far the most, you know, beneficial thing that I've come across as far as being successful at anything.
Yeah,
nothing can compete with that. Like yeah, but yeah, it's you got to think about why people would want to work with you. That's a good place to get started there. What are the different things? Or think about why would people not want to work with you? What's all your annoying habits? One's probably talking too much. I'll let
No,
you
it's great. And I thought you were introverted.
Yeah, I'm introverted till you get me going on topic.
And then you love talking.
Yeah, one-on-one, that's fine. Or maybe it's out of nerves. Like I don't like it. Like introverted people don't like quiet, weird, awkward silence. Like you feel awkward silence. Like I don't know if you're introverted or you notice that I don't know. For me, that they're the worst moments. Like as an introvert, walking up to a group of people and like interjecting yourself into a conversation, that's my biggest fear. That's the most awkward thing I could possibly do. Yeah, but this is better.
Yeah. No, I feel like I'm more extroverted, but I also do hate the awkward silence. Then I talk too much, overshare. It's not good.
To not let it happen.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fear, I'd love to chat a bit more about fear. So obviously you said with public speaking, you get really nervous. And even when you first started surfing, you did experience fear out there. So how now, or in the past when you were surfing, is fear something that you experience when you're out there? And how do you have the courage to overcome that and go out and surf those big waves?
Yeah, I feel it all the time. I don't think it ever actually completely goes away. It's just that you develop a skill set to manage it, the fear. So in the ocean, it's like I develop the skills and the knowledge around, like an example is how I can hold my breath for long periods of time, and I train my body's capacity to be able to do that in like I try and imitate a scarier environment. So I'll get a free diver, and free divers can hold their breath for like 8-10 minutes at a time, like way longer than what I can. And so to simulate what it's like to get held down by a big wave, I'll bring a free dive and we'll go to a deep pool, like under the diving boards, like a 5-meter deep pool. You swim down to the bottom, and then it's my job to get to the top so I can breathe. And then it's the free diver's job to hold me underwater until I pass out. So we wrestle at the bottom of the pool, and the whole time I'm just trying to get to the top to breathe, and he's trying to hold me underwater. So it's like simulating that experience so that I can build the sort of the skills and the knowledge and condition myself. So then I go out in the surf and I'm scared, but nowhere near as scared, because I know I can hold my breath for this long under duress. And then so when the waves do the same thing to me, it's like it's never anywhere near as bad as that. And I think that's just like the basis for dealing with any fear is like the exposure and the experience that you get is the only way you can overcome a fear. Like nothing else works. I mean, there's like mental hacks that you can use that are beneficial. Like I can use like different mindful or meditative techniques in different moments where I'm nervous or anxious, and they'll work a little bit, but they'll never be enough if you don't have the sort of preparation or the skills. Like those mental hacks and all the different ones that get taught, they're not enough to it's like having a tiny little band-aid on a huge cut, like, and the huge cut is your lack of experience in that situation, and you're trying to band-aid it with a tiny little cut. That's what I feel like a lot of like the modern pop psychology around like mental hacks and cognitive hacks are, compared to just getting out there and getting the actual skill set and experience in the environment. So I still feel fear in the surf, but as I build the experience, it's just not as strong enough to sort of stop me from being able to do what I do. And then it kind of like, at a weird point, your relationship to the feelings of fear, it just shifts, like, and it's only subtle. But it's like you used to feel the same feelings and then avoid it because you're like fearful of the danger. Eventually over time, you kind of feel those same feelings, but then all of a sudden you're excited to feel them. because like you've felt them before, and then you've gotten to the other side and you felt how good it is to get to the other side, you know? So it's like, then you slowly condition yourself to like, you got to be careful, but because you eventually start to look for nerve-wracking things to do, you know, because you get addicted to that sort of process, you know. I went off a bit of a tangent there, but I hope that answered the question.
No, that did. That answered my next question too. But I was going to say, how do you get to that stage though? I mean, I'm not there yet, of loving that feeling that you kind of seek it. So how do you make sure that you can leverage fear rather than be paralyzed by it?
I think definitely the starting point is like, you basically got to figure out, like, do a good self-assessment or reflection. It's like, figure out where you are in life. It's like, where am I at right now, and where do I want to go? Like, what's important to you? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you want retirement to look like? You know, like, figure out where you want to go. Or like, conversely, because we are hyper like focused on negative, like you were saying, it's powerful to think about what you want to avoid, you know, and get really clear on all the bad things that might happen if you don't take action and face a fear. Like, so then in that way, you kind of take the fears that you might have and put them behind you, and then they can motivate you, you know. Like, I'm way more motivated by negative situations happening to me, and I use them to force me into action versus chasing a goal or trying to attain something. I for whatever reason, my brain is more motivated just avoiding really bad things. So I kind of use it like that. But I think that's the starting point. It's like, just have a really good think about what you want out of life. Like, let's be real, you only get one shot and then it's finished. You know, it's over, and it's over real quick. Like, for all the young people that you probably talk to, I'm 40 now, like, things go, it goes real fast. I was 20, like, in the blink of an eye ago. So it goes real quick. And the worst thing you can do is just be like real regretful because you like were just too nervous to do anything, you know? So I think about where you are and where you want to go. That's the starting point. And then if it's meaningful enough where you want to get to or what you want to avoid, then you'll go out and get the skills. Like, because then it's about how do you do it. So it's like, where do you want to go? But then what are the skills that you need that will help you navigate and get to the success? And then it's just the hard work, you know. But it's got to be meaningful, because getting the skills, like, that process is like, you can't do that. And it's like anything in life, you can't do anything in life without sacrificing doing all the other shit that you could be doing, you know. So it's like, if it's not meaningful to you, you just won't make that sacrifice. And that's as hard as the fear part, you know, and the fear sits, you know, sort of meshed up in that too, because you've got to sacrifice doing all this other stuff with your life to do this one thing that's really important to you. But then you might be fearful that you're going to fail, and then you're going to miss out on all this stuff, and you're going to fail, you know, like, so it's just like clarity of what you want, why you want it, and then, you know, figure out how you do it. I guess that process, I've always found it good to kind of just found people that have done it before me and kind of decipher how they did it, like what are all like, and get real in detail about the different things that they do to be successful. And sometimes, like, that process, like, I'll see things like, I would like that person's success and what they have in life and what they're doing. But then when I break down what they've done to get it, like, really break down what they did and what they sacrificed, I'm like, no, I don't want that. Like, I don't want to sacrifice that much time with my family, with that much time with my kids, or I don't, you know, like, so, and then all of a sudden you get a bit clearer on what you're willing to do and what you're not. But I think, I think that's the best starting point. Just figure out where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that idea of being pushed by things you don't want to achieve. I've never really thought about it like that. In my head, I always think of my goals. That's a good approach to it.
And in all areas of your life, like, I do that with personal relationships. You know, I've got a real clear picture in my head about what it's going to feel like in 5 years when my wife has got, then my 7-year-old, she'll be 7, my 7-year-old daughter, and my 7-year-old daughter and my wife's new husband are flying off to Hawaii to celebrate Christmas. Like I've got a real clear picture of that in my head. So it's like, that these are all the things that you do and don't do to not fuck up that relationship and have to live through something like that, so you just really clarify like how bad life could get if you do the wrong thing, that's the version of putting the fear. Or it's, fear of regret, like missing out on opportunities is another one that I use.
And with that fear of missing out on opportunities, how do you find that balance? Because I feel like it can be really hard to find a balance between maintaining relationships. You're a father now, so being with your family and then career as well. How do you maintain that balance yourself?
Oh man, that's so hard. That's like the $1 million question. It is. It still comes back to like what means a lot to you, and going through different aspects of your life and breaking them down, like what career success, business wise, financially, personal life. Your future relationship with your partner and your kids and your family and your friends. Like how important it is that to you. And then your health is the other one that, like they're the major ones. But yeah, you've got to be really clear on those things. And then there's always the really tough, like give and takes, because you can't do it all. It's like not possible. Like you got to make those tough decisions. But there's also, it's like you make the tough decision and then you start on the track down to the where you decided to chase to or like move towards. And then you might change your mind at some point, but as long as you got to set like contingencies just to be able to change your mind at these different points, for me, like my having good relationships with my kids now is the most important point, and which means that I sacrifice probably, I don't know, 50% of the amount that I was surfing before, to be able to do that, and 50% of the amount that I'm able to travel, which means that I'm not going to be as successful in my surf career now as what I was, or my business career. But I know that like it won't be worth, the success in those parts won't be worth missing out on being a dad for that small period of time, like that sort of 15, 18 years or less, like 13 years, and then they just don't want to know you anymore. So at least I've got that part.
Yeah. Or like me, still at home, over 20 years of age, just can't get rid of your kids. Yeah. Maybe you could be that dad. Yeah.
That's pretty normal in this day and age. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, it's true.
There's some impossible scenarios with career development, property price, and like it's impossible for a new generation, I think. So not impossible, but it's not the same as it was, I think. So
it's definitely hard. Well, speaking of the fact that you sacrifice 50% of waves, I wanted to talk a little bit about your injury in 2016, whatever you're comfortable in talking about. But I'd love to hear more about that experience and how you were able to respond to that.
Yeah, so 2016, I had suffered the worst wipeout I have and had a really severe knee injury. I dislocated my knee, ended up with permanent nerve damage, almost lost my leg, and was told that I wouldn't surf again because I can't use my foot anymore. I kind of in the back of my mind had an understanding that I would surf in some capacity, but at that point I knew my career was finished, like it was over. And I struggled in hospital, like with that realization, when like it all happening at once, like my career was at the peak of what it was. Like I was never like had the success in surfing where I earned so much money at the start of my career or in the first half that I'm like set up for good. Like, and there's probably only a handful of surfers that get to do that. I'd like built my career up for 12 years, like basically reinvesting everything that I was earning into building my surf career and then attracting bigger and bigger sponsors and stuff. So I'd finally gotten to the point where I could see and set up for the future. And then that was gone, like blink of an eye. So with that part of it was really tough to deal with. And then also I had severe nerve pain from the injury. So dealing with the pain was really bad. Usually when you have bad nerve pain, it's because you nicked a nerve, like a tiny little bit of damage to a nerve. I had I think it was 14 centimeters of the nerve was sheared and damaged. So it was the pain was just exponential. So then it was all the different pain medications that you got to take to try and manage that. So dealing with all the drugs as well, all of that stuff compounded. I was just got to a pretty dark place in hospital. And like I tell in my keynote, I was just another fortunate time where I got to meet someone that kind of changed the course of my life. And I ended up meeting a young kid in hospital who had injured himself just a month before I did. But he had broken his neck, snowboarding, an injury that's a zillion times worse than what I was dealing with. And just meeting him in hospital, it was like a forced shift on my perspective of what I was dealing with. I went from just anger, frustration, self-pity, you just feel like the world's against you and you're the most unlucky person alive and blah, blah, blah. But then meeting him was a forced shift. All of a sudden I was just I felt so lucky, because if I wiped out any other way, I could be dealing with what he was dealing with. And just that realization and that shift, it made such a difference in my physical recovery, like a remarkable difference for me. Especially initially, I had really bad infections in the wounds that I had on my leg, to the point where the doctors thought they might have to amputate my leg because the infections were getting so bad. And all of that healed within a couple of weeks of meeting Jason, the guy who's in the wheelchair. And the only difference was that shift. I was lying in bed then for the most part through the day, just way happier. I was I'm lying in bed, my legs all mangled. I'm not going to surf, but I'm happy about it. Not compared to what I was, not all the time, but more times than I had been before. And that made such a difference. And then because I noticed the physical difference, it was so strong because the infections just vanished. They healed so quick. That got me really interested in the effect that emotional state, which all I could kind of pinpoint it to was gratitude, feeling lucky. That the effect that feeling like that and having that emotional state of gratitude had on my physical health. I became kind of fascinated with that. And then I just went online and researched, and found thousands of studies, directly showing how the emotional state of gratitude changes your physiology and how your nervous system functions and how your immune system functions. And so then I just my main part of rehabbing from that point was just work on feeling that lucky feeling as many times as I could in a day. But it was hard. I wasn't I was still probably in a shit mood more often than I was in a good mood. But at least now I was in good moods way more often, through the day, and I could deal with all different things way better. And I think that was the biggest factor that allowed me to come back, to be able to surf and to get to where I am now, which is I probably surf 50 or 60% of my ability level of what I could before, but it's just enough to surf big waves to the way that I want to surf them, and still have some, element of a big wave surfing career at the moment. So it was, I was really lucky to meet that guy, and I stayed in contact with him, since the day I met him, and we're good friends now. He actually just lives 2 doors down from me, and we hang out regularly. I surf with him. That was another big factor. See the amount of effort that he puts into rehab, and then to the bravery that he does to go out in the surf and ride waves as a quadriplegic lying on a surfboard. It's crazy when you see people do that. And it's just motivating to be around someone. It's really selfish. Don't get me wrong. I know it's selfish. It's but fuck, and you only have to notice it. If you walk down the street and I always know, I just maybe because I'm just had my first kid, I'm like, I think I'm just hypersensitive now. If I see a parent and they have a kid who has something wrong with them, like, man, I'm just like, like every time I see that, I'm like, holy shit, like that would be so tough to deal with, like seeing your own kid sick. Um, and it kind of has that effect now on me. It's like, fuck, I feel so lucky to, there's nothing wrong with my daughter and she's good, or like, and then there's just that same feeling. And so it's totally selfish when I hang out with Jason, my mate, who's in the quadriplegic, because every time I hang out with him or take him surfing or whatever, I just feel like real lucky. So yeah, and it just has such a crazy effect. Since I started telling that story in keynotes, like people seem to like to hear it. Like, and that's the other silver lining of being a big wave surfer and a keynote speaker. It's like something goes wrong in surfing and you wipe out and you have a bad injury or whatever. It usually makes for a good story to tell in keynote speaking. Yeah. So two careers kind of dovetail quite nicely.
Yeah. Oh, I loved that story. And even after I heard it at work, I came out and I was like to my family, when you start being grateful, there's signs of gratitude. And it just gave me chills. And I loved when you were talking about I think it was the doctor that was giving you your medication and how he was trying to be realistic, or
it's just a bit, he was pretty pessimistic. But I think, like, I realized, like, when pain specialists are dealing with, and I'm in the high risk category, like for drug addiction, like for opioid addiction, like I'm in that real high risk category, just based on my age group or whatever. And I think he was just trying to manage that, like, because he didn't want me to like get to a point where I then started getting all depressed and got addicted to the basically heroin that you're taking.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's why he was doing it, but it was just so annoying to listen to him every day give me these talks. Like, it's like, are you sure? Like, you do get that you're not going to surf again. Like, you've got to come to terms with that now. I don't want that happening down the track. And it's like, oh man, it was driving me mental.
So then what was that process like? Obviously you said you are surfing again. So what was that process like going back out there? I can't imagine I would feel very scared, but yeah.
It was just, it was so nerve-wracking. Like each step of the way, like it was really gradual. It wasn't like I just went straight back out into huge waves. It was like, first I tried surfing, and riding a really big longboard was the first type of board on a 1 foot high wave. And while it was amazing to like get the feeling of standing on a wave again, the way my foot was functioning and the disability, it was just like I could barely do it. And like there was no chance with the way it was that I was going to get any sort of decent level of surfing back again. And that was just to do with the mobility in my ankle joint. And I couldn't get my heel to I had for about 6 months, I had to walk on my toes. Like I couldn't put my foot flat, which I can get away with kind of walking, but you can't surf without being able to put your foot flat and having flexibility in your ankle joint. It's like the most important joint in your whole body. And then I just came across a surgeon that was doing a certain type of surgery, and he fixed that whole problem for me. So I went from there, but then it was like another 4 months waiting. And then when I started surfing 1 foot waves again, after that surgery, I was like, oh, hold on a minute, I can like move the board properly. Like, and then it was like a bit quicker, sort of relearning surfing again. Like I still couldn't surf normal. I had to like kind of really favor my good leg and surf the board using that leg rather than the sort of disabled leg. But yeah, just like step by step, and then going into big waves. Like I'm still in the middle of that process now. Like I've only surfed big waves 3 times, and that's partly to do with the travel restrictions, but 3 times since I got injured. So I've got a long way to get anywhere near the sort of confidence level that I had before. And that's just mostly due to like being terrified of re-injuring my leg. I'm not really not really like as dangerous as surfing looks. It's not like I don't get fear for my life surfing. I don't think that's a high probability, but injury has a decent probability. And for me now, just having such a bad injury, like that just makes me way more nervous to go through that again.
Yeah. Do you think that there is a cost to success?
Yeah. I mean, there's a cost to everything. Like, because you can't be successful without sacrifice. Like it's impossible. You can't do anything without sacrifice. Like you can't sit down and have this podcast now without sacrificing all the other things you could be doing with your time. So there's always a cost for sure, but it's like weighing it up. And like for the life and the career that I've had and where I am today in my life, I'd do it again straight away. I'd have this injury no matter what. If it meant that I didn't get to have the life that I had, yeah, this is fine. If it was worse, for sure, I wouldn't do it. Like I wouldn't want anything remotely as bad as what Jason's dealing with. Then of course it's not worth it. But yeah, I think it's just kind of weighing it up. Like it's a bit different for me now. Like going back to big wave surfing with a daughter, like there's no way I'd take the same amount of risk, of being a parent and someone's really relying on you, like their future is. I think the risk reward, discussions I have with myself now and my wife are a little, it's a fair bit different to what I did before.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask this question about comparison. So obviously in sport, it's a very competitive industry, and whether you come first determines your success in the specific race or surfing the wave. Or so how do you ensure that competition, even with you for sponsorships and things like that, how do you ensure that competition doesn't turn into a sense of comparison? Like I feel like starting in any stage of your career really, and with social media like LinkedIn, it can become very easy to compare your path to other people's paths. So how can you kind of avoid that?
I don't think you can avoid it completely. Like I think for whatever reason, our brains are tuned to comparison. Like it's just part of your DNA, like, cause it's how you gauge whether like your competence level and then what you can provide for the people around you. Like that's kind of like you're constantly gauging that. So I think it's impossible to get rid of it totally, but definitely like managing it is really important. Like because going back to the evolution thing, like you evolve with different software, right? Like we're evolved to be around like a tiny group of people, and so your comparison, it was within that group, like, and then if you were competent at a skill and provided to that small group of people, like your comparison's good, like you're beneficial to people. But in today's age where you can surround yourself with the greatest hyperachievers in the world and just make yourself feel like shit every day. Like it's so easy. Like you could create an Instagram feed that makes you feel so inadequate and depressed constantly. Like it's really easy to do. So I think you just gotta manage it. You don't get rid of it. Like can be a valuable motivator, but to me, I kind of manage it by managing who I compare myself to, but then also like trying to do the majority of my comparison just to myself. Like it's a cliche saying, but compare yourself to who you were yesterday, and that just highlights progression, and if you can highlight progression, it's the same thing as the lockdown advice around dealing with the lockdown, because progression like makes your brain function well. There's a Russian neuroscientist, he's I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he studies a mechanism in the brain that he believes is in a roundabout way responsible for 80% of your brain's ability to create any positive emotion at all. Like, and it's ridiculously sophisticated how it does it, and there's all different factors at play, but he coins this mechanism, like he calls it the orienting reflex, right? So, and what it does is constantly scan your environment looking for progression towards something meaningful, and everything tiny thing you do on any given day if it relates to like a goal that you've set in the future or getting away from something, and the part of your brain sees a little bit of progression, it creates the positive emotion that makes you happy and resilient, you know. But that's why like a situation like now is so difficult, because your ability to see the progression gets stripped away, and then it's like the uncertainty creeps in. So that part of your brain, that mechanism's looking for progression and not sure what's happening, and freaks out, and then you lose like a lot of that positive emotion, you know. So it just comes back, like that progression thing. So powerful. I think I don't even know what your first question was, but I went down a big rabbit hole that led into that one. Yeah. The comparison. Yeah. So comparing yourself to yourself, your former self, is a good way to adjust, like constantly comparing yourself to other people, you know. Like if you do that and you only do that, you're gonna go down a rabbit hole of never being good enough, and then that's just impossible.
No, I think that's so important. And it kind of reminds me of what you were talking about being grateful and looking at what you're grateful for in your life. And I feel like that's a good way to switch your mentality.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And how do you spoke about this on the talk as well, but I wanted to share it with the listeners. How do you implement gratitude more and more in your everyday life?
So because it's not natural for me being neurotic and being like really hyper focused negative person, like optimism doesn't come naturally to me. I did come across a technique that's really valuable. It's called habit stacking. I can't remember. I feel bad because I don't mention where I came from, but I can't remember where it came from. But habit stacking is where you take a positive lifestyle habit that you want to implement. Like it could be anything, but for me, was creating gratitude. And then you take that habit and you stack it on top of a primary habit that you have. And primary habits are just what you do every day without fail. So you might wake up, have a shower, brush your teeth, have a cup of coffee, commute to work, eat lunch, like all the things that you do every day. You can kind of do all these different things without really thinking. Like it doesn't take that much, like they're built into you. So they're all moments of like free time where you can stack a new habit on top of, and then you kind of piggyback. That one habit is programmed into your brain, and you piggyback that notion, like the fact that it's already in there, with a new habit. When I was going through my rehab, it was like I wasn't allowed to have a cup of coffee until I'd written 3 things down I was grateful for. Right. So there's one technique, and like you got to get someone to police it, you know, like so you don't get to have it until, like, maybe your local barista can police it for you. You can write a piece of paper and hand it to them with your 3 things you're grateful for before you get your coffee. Or I'd send a text message to someone in my life, like saying thanks, or like just sharing the gratitude would be really beneficial for me. Like I'd have to do that before I could watch like my favorite Netflix series, you know, no Handmaid's Tale until you've sent the text message, you know, like and just building them on there, and it's just utilizing like the habitual nature of your brain and how it functions and how it conserves energy by doing it. So you kind of can hack it with putting the things that you want to do on top of it.
Yeah. When I heard that, I Googled gratitude journals, and they were like $70. And I thought, Chantelle, just write it down on a piece of paper.
Just write it down.
You don't need the $70 journal.
Yeah, and then but it's just the accountability factor. So just get someone to hold you accountable. That will be the difference.
No, for sure. I think it's really important. And another question I had for you is, obviously you've been really successful, and fear has been one of those main aspects for you in being successful in surfing. What do you think, or what's your advice for people entering their early careers who want to build a successful and meaningful one?
I think like in relationship to fear, it's the same thing that works for me in surfing, worked for me in speaking. And it's like getting motivated by really clarifying what you want. Like, what does success in your career look like? Like where's a role? Like pick one that you want to chase, right? Because if you don't start chasing one and moving towards it, you won't know if that's not the right one, if it is or isn't. So at least just get one and get forward momentum to it. And then along the way, you can deviate and change to something different, but it gets the momentum. And remind yourself of why success in this career, like why is that going to be beneficial for your life and your loved ones or your future loved ones or the community around you. Like, so once you've developed that, it's like you've got the roadmap, right? And then it's like, that's your motivation. And then it's like, what skills do I need to get there? And it's the skills, like the individual skills that will allow you to navigate any fears that you face and overcome them and face them. Like a lot of people in the corporate world, like a lot of their stress comes from interpersonal conflict within the workforce. Like you have this crazy environment where you're all on the same team, you're all working for the success of the company, you got this shared vision of what success means for Westpac, say, but then at the same time you're all competing for different job roles, like, and these small top job roles that you all want to get to. So it's this bizarre environment of like working together, but then you're also competing. So it creates personal conflict at work. And you're going to have to navigate like that conflict with your bosses, different personalities, and like building a skill set or a tool set, right, that allows you to manage that conflict is so beneficial. And that's the same thing. If like for a lot of people, I'm not saying this is for everyone. Some people just enjoy that type of shit, but for other people, like that's the source of fear and stress. So master it, like learn all the skills, like study as much emotional intelligence stuff as you can study, like study all the communication skills that you could develop, all the art of persuasion, like all these different things that help you navigate that world. And then, that's probably the best advice. Like figure out what you want, why you want it, and how you're going to get there. And then just tie that to like the shit, boring, mundane, difficult things that you got to do every day, like, because you're sacrificing everything else. And when they're tied, then you get the orienting reflex, like it actually starts to function, like, and then difficult things or boring things or whatever, you'll be able to do them because they're tied to something important.
I love what you said about just starting, because I'm sure when you began your surfing career, you didn't think that keynote speaking was something that you would go into, and yet here you are now.
Yeah, exactly. You have no idea what opportunity might come, but it's just if you don't move towards something, then you're just stagnant, and then you're less likely to have other good opportunities. And if you're young and you're just starting out, you got plenty of time. It's so much time. Like that's the place you want to make mistakes. Like for me in business and career and everything else like that, I waited, like except for surfing, everything else I waited way too long. Like you got to take all the risks that you can take as early as you can take them, because you can come back from that. You can't, when you have kids and family and all this stuff, it's hard to take risks, especially like financial ones.
Yeah, that's good advice. I feel like in the moment it can be hard to do that too, but it's a good reminder that while you're young, you have time and opportunities, so take advantage of them.
Definitely.
Well, that was incredible. I loved hearing your story. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me on the podcast.
Too easy. Thanks for having me.